Hello, everyone. I see there are people here. I'm so happy because this is actually my first ever live and I'm pretty nervous. I decided that I was going to try do these kind of, I guess, to get over my fear of doing stuff live, which is very real. Like I'm already kind of like and nervous about what's going to go wrong. But I just think it's fun and I want to try do these, more often, especially for those who perhaps aren't sure about if coding is for them and they just want to test it out and want someone to be able to answer questions for them quickly, which is what I'm here to do. That's why it's alive, right? That's why I see so many of you on the chat. I've got it all set up. It's just me. So if there's any technical difficulties, it is my fault. So just bear with me. But yeah, amazing. So many people here. I see memes for fun, swoosh. I walk around the world. A lot of you, sorry, I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Mamotif, Niket, Didier, amazing. Stanley as well. Thank you so much for your words of encouragement. Out of interest, how many of you are here to kind of learn the fundamentals of HTML and code editors and just start from scratch? Or how many of you are here to just answer questions? Because we can use that for this too, right? Like this can be our time for anything. If you have any questions about stuff that is not related to code editors or HTML, then also please feel free to ask. It's kind of a a free for all. Is it okay to call it that? I don't know. Well, that's what I have just called it. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have seen many live streams, but this one in particular, we're just going to be going through. I prepared some material. It's slides and a bit of like coding exercises that we're going to do together. And by the end, you're going to know how to use a code editor for one, and the fundamentals of HTML. And if we get to it, there is a project. But as I said, this is my first time doing it live. So while I think it might take an hour, we might stop and answer questions. The same material is actually available on codewithanya.com. I have a 1 hour free coding introduction. So if you don't get this finished, then you can always go to that and you can get the material there too. Or if you want to sign up for the course, I have a special code, which is in the chat, and it is Let's Code 20, available for 24 hours. So great. I'm just having a read through all the comments. Oh, you bought a book on Python. That's cool, Volga. Yeah, if you're curious to learn about HTML, that's definitely what we're going to be doing today. And I have actually released quite a few ChatGPT videos. So I don't know if you guys know, but OpenAI is the thing. So Microsoft bought it recently. OpenAI is what powers ChatGPT, as well as stuff like DALL-E, so the image generator. And I actually do a few tutorials on how to use the OpenAI API. And by using that OpenAI API, we are able to build our own chat GPT. I also talk about the difference between text completions and chat completions. And then I also show you how to write prompts. So we literally supply the API with text and then it generates some images for us. So check out, I think that the last 4 videos, and tomorrow I have a video on building our own SQL generator, thanks to the OpenAI API. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy that too. Okay, so let's do it. I think I've chatted enough. Let's get on with it. So as you can see, I prepared some slides. Let's see if I can get these slides to work properly. So first off, let's start off with what a code editor is. Can anyone in the chat, maybe, someone describe in the chat what you think. How would you describe a code editor with 1 sentence? Let's start with that. There's many code editors out there. I'm actually going to go into the next slide to kind of tell you what they are. So yeah, before we get started with, I guess, anything, let's talk about the tools that we need in order to help us code. So just like we have Word documents to write essays, we have code editors. That's probably the most important tool actually we as developers need. We could actually technically even write code in our text editors, which is why I put text editor. But luckily for us, technology has evolved and we can now write code in code editors. Okay, so code editors are built specifically to make our lives easier as developers by auto-indenting lines and then adding even color-coded helpers for readability. When you've got like a semicolon, a curly brace and a curly brace to kind of figure out where that code block stops. Some code editors actually also go a step further and give us prompts as a text when we made an error. Or there's also a lot of what are they called? Plugins like Tab 9, which will give us code completions too. So kind of like an AI code completion. So there's plenty of plugins for these code editors that are available to us. Now, there is one thing that I want to talk about is an IDE or integrated development environment. It essentially does the same as a text editor or a code editor, but also acts as a compiler, as well as a bunch of other things. This tool is a bit too robust for what we're going to be needing today, but it is worth knowing the difference between each of these tools. Now, today, hybrids of these tools exist, so it's actually much harder to fit a specific technology into one of these categories. But yeah, that's how I would split them up. Three tools that you can write code in. So let's have a look. Sarah says a code editor is basically a text editor that's focused on the process of writing computer programs. Yes, I mean, I would agree with that statement. It's basically, like I mentioned, built specifically to offer things like line indenting and so forth, which you don't really get in a Word doc. So that was a great explanation. Thank you very much, Sarah. So there are a bunch. I can see people mentioning some too in the chat. So we have offline options such as Atom, even though I'm not sure Atom exists anymore. Does it exist? That could be old news, but Atom, Sublime Text. We also have VS Code or Visual Studio Code, and we also have WebStorm. So those are our offline options. Okay, you will see me using WebStorm a lot in my tutorials, and then I also use Visual Studio Code in my course. So those are the two that I use the most. I did used to use Atom, but so long ago now, which is kind of why I included it in here. Oh yeah, Atom's gone. Oh, then Max says Atom is alive. I don't know. We need to find this out. I don't want to be spreading fake news. So those are some offline options. Of course, there is one more. You could just figure out which one's for you. There's no, obviously we have some diehard fans of one or the other, but I mean, I'm like Switzerland. I'm pretty chill about what people choose to use. And then we have some online options. So I don't know, I would always suggest downloading the offline version because, if you're going to get coding, you might as well do it using the kind of more robust tools. But if you just want to play around, then there's plenty of online options. It just means you don't have to actually download the code editor or IDE onto your computer. You just visit URL, probably sign up. I imagine some of them want your email and stuff to be able to use their programs, and you can just write code in there. So whichever is good for you. I'm loving everyone's personal preferences. This is really cool and interesting. Yes, I see a lot of, Notepad++. Yes, I should have included that maybe in my examples too, as I can see it in the chat. David X, I love seeing you on my channel. This is the first time I'm doing a live, so yes, I'm pretty sure we had a discussion previously about how scared I am of them, so please be nice. Okay, so everyone, please go ahead and, well, actually, which one should I use? I'm going to use an offline one. I already have VS Code and WebStorm downloaded onto my computer. Shall we have everyone comment if you'd rather me do this demonstration with VS Code or WebStorm? And I'm going to have a look at the comments, and I'm just going to go with the one that gets the most. So WebStorm is more robust. And I actually have I have partnered with them. So I do have a discount code in the video description somewhere. And VS Code, you just download it. The VS Code's for free, but then they obviously want you to upgrade and use their IDE. So you might get marketing material from them, just so you know. Okay. Oh no, it's so difficult because it's like 50-50. VS Code, VS Code, VS Code, WebStorm, VS. Okay. I think from what I can see, VS Code is winning. So I'm gonna do VS Code today, and the next one I'll do WebStorm just to be kind of fair. Okay, so everyone, I'm gonna go off the slides now. So here again are just some offline options and some online options in case my little monsters weren't to your liking. And I'm now gonna show you. So let's just go ahead. Obviously, I already have. Oops, this is a game of chess I was working on. So we're going to create a new project. But for those of you who are new to the world of code editors, all you're going to do is visit VS Code. I misspelled that, but you know what I'm doing. So this is VS Code, and just simply download it, right? That's it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and continue, but I'll be doing a lot of chatting. This shouldn't take too long. Hopefully you've all downloaded stuff before, so it should be pretty straightforward. If not, then just drop a message in the chat. Okay, so this is what it should look like. Okay, so beautiful VS Code. This is a code editor. It's really that simple. So now that you have your VS Code editors downloaded or, or currently downloading, hopefully I'm not going too fast. Yes, if anything, we need more little monsters. I agree. I love using the little monsters to explain stuff in my course. I don't think, maybe I was like, oh, maybe I'm being patronizing, but no, I love monsters. So I don't think so, right? It makes stuff easier to kind of comprehend. So cool. Okay. So I'm going to carry on. Just make sure you're at this point. And let's continue. So the next thing we need to know is how to structure files in code editors. Well, it's not actually in the code editors. Sorry, I take that back. I shouldn't say that. It's files on your computer that then you open up with a code editor to view. And these files can be linked together. But we're going to go on to that in a bit. So let's move on. I'm going to explain to you how a website is made up next. So a website essentially consists of, like I said, a bunch of files all organized together in a particular structure that you design. So here we see a project. Okay, this is obviously a project that I am going to make in the future. We're literally going to focus on this HTML part in this course, but as in this live stream. But if you want to continue, then we do build out the whole portfolio. We add the CSS in like a next module. Then we add the JavaScript after learning JavaScript. And the images go kind of somewhere in here somewhere. Okay, so yeah, here we see the kind of structure that I decided on for my project. You will see a folder or directory, because directory and folder are used interchangeably. So if you hear someone saying directory in the coding world, it basically just means a folder, right? Okay, directory just sounds fancier. But I'm going to say folder. I'll use it interchangeably because it depends what kind of mood I'm in. So you see the folder here called My Portfolio. And in it, like I said, there's a folder. I've chosen to put the pages in a folder. You don't kind of have to if you don't want to. And then you can make a folder for your CSS, make a folder for your JavaScript, make a folder for your images, or you could just put all the files in this folder. It's completely up to you how you design it. I like to do it like this just because I think it's like neater, but each to their own. I'm not going to judge. Like the last thing we need is people like judging each other's tidiness and stuff like that. Not today, anyway. Like when you start working for a company and they have their own rules about how they want to do stuff, then probably listen to them. But as you're learning right now, I think, getting stuff working is the main goal, right? Get something working and then worry about how neat it is. That stuff's for later. But anyway, this is my portfolio. So if you have chosen, so has everyone got their VS Code or code editors ready? If not, then let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to continue. Is it too hard to read this? You can put the screen on, you can expand the screen on YouTube. I'm pretty sure it lets you do that and make it full screen. So, yeah, so we're going to recreate this, okay? Well, we're just going to do the HTML part for now. Actually, let's just create, I'm going to do all of it. I'm going to do all of it. Let's do it. Why not? So let's go back to here. So this is my code editor, and you can do this from the terminal. The terminal is the fancy thing that looks like, you know, kind of matrixy that I will show you later, but I'm just doing this for beginners. So the easiest way to start a project is get up your code editor, and then on your desktop, literally just create a folder. So there we go. There's my folder. It's kind of stuck there. I hope you can see it. I'm going to rename it. And I'm literally going to do my, why is that? My dash portfolio. There's a reason I'm doing a dash and not a space. So just, I'm making it all smaller case. I'm going to go onto that in a bit. So there it is. Okay, now if I open up, there's nothing here. Now I can create folders directly in here, or you can do it in your code editor. So I'm going to get out my code editor again, and I'm going to go open, and then on my desktop, ta-da, there it is, my portfolio, the thing I just made. And I'm going, if I look in it, there's nothing in there. I'm going to open it up, and this is how you see what's in a folder. There's nothing, right? Because we just made it. Okay, so now, like I said, I'm going to do this from the code editor. I'm just going to create a new directory or folder. What did we say it was going to be in the first one? We're going to have a place for HTML. Actually, I'm going to choose to have, so I'm not going to make a folder. I'm actually going to make a file. So click on this one right here called index.html. So the root of my project, this is the root of my project. Index.html is going to be on the root. And then I did say I'm going to have a directory for other pages if I want, because at the moment, this is going to be my web page. I'm going to choose to serve this up to the internet. And then any other pages, I'm going to store in a directory called pages. So once again, click on here, and I'll have this little line to show that it's a folder. And then once clicked on here, I'm just going to actually show you what's happening, ta-da, on my desktop. So my portfolio now has an index.html file and a folder. You will see that already this knows it's an HTML file. And how? It's because we gave it the .html extension. So that's how we kind of communicate with our computer. And we're like, oh, I'll make a file, but make sure to treat it like an HTML file, rather than, you know, dealing with JavaScript code or CSS code or anything like that. So there we go. Let's continue making our little project. So we've made this one, we've made this one. Let's make a folder for CSS, a folder for JavaScript, and a folder for images next, right? Okay, so let's do it. I'm not going to put anything, I'm not going to put CSS files or JavaScript files or anything like that. I'm just going to do the folders for now because, you know, we're just dealing with HTML at the moment. And when we get to dealing with CSS and JavaScript, then I'll do all that. So let's go back to here now. Oops, I just removed it. There we go. So once again, directory, CSS, and a directory, JS. Oops. Do that. Let's just go ahead and I'm just going to do styles CSS. So once again, I'm adding the .csx extension. So it now treats it like a CSS file. You will see there's a little different icon here than here because this is being treated like an HTML file. And if we look, well, let's just finish this off for now. So once again, I just want to make sure I'm in the root. So I click on a file that's in the root of the project. Click here. Now we're going to create a folder for JavaScript. And I'm just going to create a file called app.js. So again, JS to treat this as a JavaScript file. So we give it the JS extension and hit enter. And then there was one more. I know I said I wouldn't add these files, but I'm just going to do it. what was this one? Images. And then images I'll leave empty because we don't have any images to give. And if we look in here, ta-da, that has been added. Okay, so I think we're now ready to carry on. This is looking really good. I'm just going to minimize all of these and deal with the index.html file. Now, before we do much else, let's actually talk about the naming conventions. So like I said, you notice that I am, so yeah, we've created that. We haven't created that. Let's talk about naming conventions. So you noticed how I kept the folder names in lowercase. So this is because many computers, especially web servers, are case sensitive. So it'll pick up on the difference between capital and not capital. Okay, so this means to find a file in your project and say use capital when none exists, it might not work, which when you work as a developer, you kind of become more sensitive to these things. But, when I was starting out, I was like, why is it not working? Like, but it's because, cases matter. So just to be safe, just from now on, just do everything in lowercase, right? And no spaces. No spaces because browsers, web servers, and programming languages don't particularly handle spaces in the same way as each other. And this can cause a lot of issues, right? So if we go to the next slide, you might have seen this. So yeah, great demonstration. Not correct, correct. And again, for my project, this might not work. We don't want spaces, put a dash there. Why? This is because, like I said, you might have seen this, like divide and 20 sign. Twitter does it for spaces. If you've ever kind of tried to, I don't know if has anyone ever tried to prompt the text in a tweet? So if you share a URL with someone, it will kind of open up in their Twitter, but already pre-configured text. And if you look at the URL that's done by the URL and the spaces are these things, yeah. So some services will replace the space areas in the file names with this divide and 20. So it's for this reason that I just suggest, to be safe, just don't use the spaces, just use hyphens or something like that. Didier says CSS cascading style shut down. Yes. And yeah, you can learn some CSS. Just check out my course or just check out some of my videos. Again, there's 20% of my course if you want to carry on doing that, or of course, just watch my videos online. There's two options for you. Okay, so great. So now that we have learned a little bit about file structure and naming projects, so again, stick to lowercase, avoid spaces, and avoid underscores. That's another one I didn't notice. Again, just do the hyphens. They are safer. I think it's now to talk a little bit more about what exactly HTML is. So let's do it. So I'm just going to move some stuff around. Ooh, and let's go. So in this section, what we're going to do is just talk about the very basics of coding, right? By looking at a language. This language is called HTML, and it's essentially the thing that started all for web development. Without it, we wouldn't have pretty pages like this one. Maybe not so pretty, but you know what I mean. That this actual very website is built on. Okay. And to understand a little bit more about how all of this works, I'm going to be starting off by giving you a brief overview of where HTML sits in the context of a web page, understand how it came about, and then move on to a tutorial with some interactive questions and code examples, and we can be a bit more interactive about this. So that's what we're going to learn. And then, already we have started making our project one. Of course, there are other projects that will be made. We probably won't do them. Well, we're not going to do them in this 1 hour introduction, but that's kind of the gist, that you build one project and then you kind of expand on your knowledge and so on. There's a question. Okay, quick question for anyone in the chat. How do you avoid paragraph windows in Tailwind CSS? That is not something for me. I actually don't use Tailwind CSS. Even in my old job, we kind of just stuck to styled components. So yeah, sorry, I have no idea. Maybe I should look into Tailwind CSS because I've been hearing a lot about it. So what exactly is it? HTML stands for, does anyone know what HTML stands for actually? Anyone? Even guesses. Pick your worst guess. Human, traffic, mail, land. That's really bad. Oh, thanks, Anmol. Thanks, that's very nice. Excellent says I'm missing out on Tailwind. Hypertext markup language. Yes, that dude is correct. Okay, a lot of you are getting it right. Nice Googling. I'm joking. Okay, yes, that is very true. Hypertext markup language. And is essentially the thing that we use to describe the structure of web pages. I don't know if you guys knew that there is semantic meaning between all the elements that we use, and we are literally telling our browsers to treat stuff differently. So that is something that, you know, I think is important to know because it helps with stuff like SEO and so on. So that's something that we're going to talk about in a bit. So the way I kind of like to think about it is in the way a teacher marks your work, right? With like a big fat red pen. She will make annotations on your text in order for you to change it. So it might be to change something like the spelling or like make a heading larger or bold or something. And these annotations are essentially not to be seen by the end, right? By the end user, say you're publishing a book, but they are to be applied behind the scenes. That's kind of what markup language is, if you will. Okay, it's the same for when we use it in text processing. You're annotating a document that is syntactically different to the existing text. So, for example, we can essentially get a bunch of text that looks kind of like this and turn it into this by applying different annotations to say, hey, make this big and bold, or hey, make this a list, and so on. So as you will see here, we've applied some annotation to make this text in here bold, make this a paragraph, make this a heading, make this regular text, and so on. So this is all thanks to HTML. Okay, and then we have HTML, because that's what the logo looks like. So behind the scenes, this actually in our HTML document looks like this, right? So there's our heading, there's our list, and so on. So let's have a look at how to do this in the next section. HTML syntax is what we want to talk about next. So we have now seen what hypertext markup language, or HTML, looks like in a real life example. So for example, this thing right here, and how that kind of translates into the document and annotates it in order to look the way it does. And now, and after learning that, we're going to learn about the structure of statements in a computer language. So we're essentially going to look at the little tags and what they mean and how many of them exist and so on, and what they do to text. So this is the syntax for most elements. You will have like a little opening tag and a closing tag for most of them, okay? Not all of them, but for most. In this particular occasion, this little B, so that means bold, makes the text bold. Okay, we have the opening tag and the closing tag, and this is what it looks like in the browser. HTML, the only language capable of hacking NASA's mainframe. Yes, I've seen that meme or joke. Thanks, that dude. It was a meme and a joke, right? Here is that same bold, so the opening tag and the closing tag to make that text bold, so that essentially that element, but paired with a P element. So P is for paragraph. And now, even though it's hard to tell here as a paragraph, and in between that paragraph, this text has been done or annotated to appear bold. Okay? And in fact, what we can do is match over 100 different types of HTML elements. So those were just two. And here are some of the most popular ones at our disposal. But like I said, there's over 100. So you will see some headings, you will see an image element, you will see a div, which we'll talk about later, and so on. All of these we will talk about in more detail. I just want to kind of show you the syntax of HTML, which is an opening tag and a closing tag with either, like a B or a P or an H1, H2, H3, and so on for headings and so on. So that is what it looks like. If you ever see that, that's an HTML element, or most likely an HTML element, because it could not be, but I think that's outside of the scope of this tutorial. Didier loves HTML elements. Me too. Let's carry on. Okay, so let's have a deeper dive into some of these before we start putting them into our project. So here we have, like I said, the P element. It represents a paragraph of text, and we have the opening tag, right? That we go an opening tag and a closing tag. And now this will be treated as a paragraph element. Our browser will pick it up and be like, oh, that's a paragraph. It won't assign it kind of a semantic meaning. So for example, if you have a heading, that will most likely be attributed to how your article looks on Google, right, as the main topic of your website. But this probably won't be, because the paragraph is less important than the heading. Okay. Yeah. So there we go. Again, opening tag, closing tag. Then we have some text, and the whole thing is referred to as a paragraph element. And now we have the headings. The headings, they go from H1 to H6. And again, they are hierarchical. I said that wrong, but you get my drift. So the H1 heading will be the most important. Most websites should have an H1 heading, because, that is the thing that will get picked up as the main kind of gist of the website. And then you should always go down in, you shouldn't really go H1 heading and then use an H6 heading just because you want a really small H6 heading. No, you should use the H2 heading if you use an H1 heading first, and then just change the size of an H2 heading with CSS. So that is something to keep in mind if you really want to do best practices for building HTML web pages. Okay. Yes, Nick Brett, we also have header, footer, nav, article, and section. That is correct too. We're going to cover those a little bit later. But thank you for the feedback. Keep the feedback coming. Keep the feedback coming. So yes, let's talk a little bit more about semantic meaning. So I've already touched a little bit on semantic meaning. So meaning that the browser will read the text with some kind of meaning, right? So in the case of the H1 tag, that will be treated as the most important title on the page. And I also did briefly mention that most elements have an opening tag and a closing tag. One of them that doesn't is the image element, right? So this one just has an opening tag, and we put all the important information in that opening tag. We actually use image elements to embed, well, you can probably guess, images onto our pages. And we do it via the specific attribute. So that is the source attribute, right? And then we provide a path to the image. So this is very basic. It is not a very complicated path. I will explain that when we go back to our project. And then what is very important here is the alternative attribute. So always use alternative attributes, not only because if the image doesn't work, so the path is broken. More importantly, it's for, people with perhaps for the visually impaired. This alt will essentially be picked up by a screen reader. So if someone, who can't potentially see your website uses a screen reader to tell them what's on the screen, what is the coolest part is the screen reader will pick out, like it will use its screen reader voice to tell that person that, how you would read, how you listen to audiobooks and stuff. It will kind of read a paragraph as a paragraph. If something is in strong it is wrapped in a strong element, it will kind of say it if it was bold, and so on. And the same with an image. If there's no image, it will say this is an image of dog snacks, which is really cool. I always tell people to use the alt attribute. What does David say? The best thing about web pages is that they don't blow up and give you crazy compiler message. That is true. And thanks for lurking, Nick. Always appreciate a fellow dev kind of also chiming in. So thank you very much. I pozdrowienia, Konrad. Cześć. Let's carry on. So now that we've covered the image element, let's talk about commenting out code. So commenting out code, you can comment out code as you saw you can comment out code, right? But it's different in HTML files and CSS files and JavaScript files. This is how you'd comment out code in HTML files. All you would do is put it in between this, so these little characters right here, and the kind of dash arrow, and it will comment it out, meaning it will not be picked up in the document. It's just for us devs to read. Why might we want to do this? It's so that, we can leave notes to ourselves or potentially to other developers who come across and something needs explaining and so on. So that is also important. I'm going to show you how to do that. Yes, so memes for fun says we can do 2//. That's actually for JavaScript files. So that is also good to know. So yeah, so we've covered like the basic syntax. We've covered how to what HTML elements are, and we've also covered how to comment out code. I think it's now time to use this basic knowledge a little bit before carrying on, just so we can kind of, start putting stuff in our code editor. But to do that, right, we need to actually have this kind of skeleton. I like to call it a skeleton. Perhaps it's called something else, but I call it skeleton now, so that's my truth. Because so far all we've been writing is actually invalid. It will work, but it's not valid. And I'm going to show you, what does Nick say? We don't know what this does, but everything breaks when we delete it. Avoid that, please. Yeah, exactly. So like Nick said, you probably might leave a comment like that or see comments like that in HTML. Yeah, boilerplate. That's the word I was looking for. HTML skeleton, what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's do it. I'm just going to... 1 second. Now, there are... in WebStorm actually does this for us actually, but we're not using WebStorm. And I'm pretty sure there's like shortcuts you can use in VS Code, but I don't know them. So what I always do, and I still do this, and I've been coding for a very long time, is I always just Google the boilerplate, because I mean, I'm not going to remember this. This is like useless for me to keep in my brain because I could just copy it. So there's a little secret for you. This is how I get my boilerplate code. So I just copy it from Jessica Wilkins' article. And in your index HTML, just paste it like so. So I'm just going to get rid of the script tag because we're not at the part where we want to link up the JavaScript or the CSS. And let's just talk this through. I'm going to leave this for now. And I'm going to save this file. So I'm going to save this file. As you can see, it's not saved because there's a little dot. You're going to press Command S. I do think I have a slide on it, but I don't think that is coming up next. Let's just have a quick look. Oh, it is. Saving files. So just in case, there's also some shortcuts if you want to cut out a line, copy a line, paste a line, and save a file. I just saved a file. So I've done it kind of for Mac and for, I guess, non-Mac. On Mac, you press the little command and an S to save a file. Or if you're non-Mac, then you use Control and S to save a file. So that's what I just did. Those are some other ones too. So we have saved the file, right? And now, if you click on the index.html file, I'm going to literally copy the path to it. I'm going to copy the path. So just make sure you go copy path, not copy relative path, but copy path. And now that just means that, I'm just going to get up another. page. I'm just going to paste it in like so. So now I'm literally getting that index HTML page that lives in the project, or sorry, the folder or directory, if you want to be fancy, called my portfolio, that lives on my desktop. And that's my username, right? So I'm literally just finding the path to it on my computer and opening it up, which is pretty cool. You can do that with any file on your computer. But you might not work, but you can try. So yeah. And what is cool, you won't see anything in here because we haven't put any HTML elements in here yet. But what you will see is that it says HTML5 boilerplate because we gave it that title. So that shows up in the browser. If I can change this to be Anya is the best ever. Save it, so Command S. And now I need to find the refresh, and it is the best ever. So we have actually done some coding. That was coding, which is pretty cool. So that is the first we've done. We've just learned how to change the title of our document, and it will show up in the browser tab. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope everyone is at this level so far. Thanks. Are there any questions? Is that Code Sandbox? No, we are using VS Code for this tutorial, but Code Sandbox is also a viable option. Please do check it out. East or West, Anya's the best. I like that. Thanks, Mew. So fun. Is it better with live server via our code writer? Yeah, I don't really use live servers for tutorials just because I kind of want to show it from the very kind of vanilla, basic. I always like, even when I make games in JavaScript, I don't really like to use Canvas, right? I like to use the basics because I think fundamentals are so important. And you can get to a point where you're just using so many plugins and so much of that you kind of just use a lot of unnecessary stuff. I always like to keep everything very streamlined, right? Because you don't want too much code that's like useless and doesn't do anything. And I think by learning the fundamentals and really kind of being picky on what plugins you use and stuff like that. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent now. But yeah, so for my tutorials, I just like to show the basics of how to just, like save a file manually and view it in the browser, just for those who are beginners. And yeah, so that's why I did. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so we've got to this point. This is pretty cool. I'm actually just going to do this because I think it'd be nice to see both just like that. I'm going to minimize this and maybe make this a little bit smaller. Great. So hopefully you can all see. Maybe make this a little bit smaller as well. If not, please maximize your pages on YouTube. I think it gives you an option to view the page in full if you want. Okay, so we have gone over. Oh yeah, save, refresh. You'll be doing that a lot. I feel like we've done these, so let's skip those. This is a repeat. So I think maybe let's start adding stuff to our HTML pages. So this little thing right here, I'm just going to explain what we have in here. So this char set UF8, I mean, I wouldn't worry about this too much for now. Just know that essentially this is the thing that allows us to view anything from, simple texts like ABC to characters in other languages. So this is Arabic. Or this is like an English or American B, or probably some other languages too. Or this little funky guy right here, like this little text snowman, right? So that is all thanks to this piece of code there. So the char set UTF8. Okay. Can you tell me why it's written doc type with HTML? So that's kind of just, what, we don't actually need that much. So I'm kind of just going through this from the boilerplate. But if you commented that out, that would be fine too. It's kind of more just for descriptive purposes. Let's carry on. Before we move on, actually, I'm just going to quickly talk about these other ones. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger because I think it would be nice to see. So we've covered this. This is actually for when we start wanting to change the viewport on mobile. So again, I think maybe this is outside of the scope of this HTML course, but if you want, and after you've finished building a portfolio, you can just try adding this and just seeing how it will change the viewport of what your website on a mobile as opposed to what it would look like without it. We do cover this later on, but I think for now it's outside of the scope of, this very beginner course. But just keep that in mind. If you ever see that, that's what that's for. And again, this is outside of the scope. So this is kind of the basics for what we need for today. And let's carry on. Okay, so we have our very basic, very basic kind of HTML document. And we want to start adding stuff like the headings, the paragraphs that we saw earlier. So we're going to do so now. So let's go back to here. And like I kind of showed you already, we're going to add a title. So as we know already, if we want to add a title and we want this to be the most important title, what element do we use? Anyone? Most important title on the web page. It's an element. We briefly touched on it. What does this element look like? Yes. So it's not the title tag. The title tag is what is the title of our document and you can see in the browser tab. H1 is what we need, right? That's the most important heading, right? Not head. This is actually not, this is kind of metadata stuff. How do I explain that? It's like not going to be visible in the document. It's more for the like Google search engines and stuff to use, right? So that it knows that the language you're using is English, the charter, and it knows what the title of the document is. But yeah, anything in here is not going to be visible. Everything in between the two body tags, though, will be visible in our document, if that makes sense. So yeah, keep that in the head. And then we're going to put a heading in the body. Let's go ahead and go my portfolio, as that's what we are building. And once again, click Command S. So now if we look in the browser and refresh, we get an H1 heading. So that is the most important one. I'm just going to show you what the others look like. So H2, blah, H3, blah, H4, blue. You can tell how my brain works. Blah. And H6. Now I'm going to do an H7, but for the eagle-eyed of you, you will notice something. And there we go. So there's an H1, there's an H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. And of course, with CSS, we can change the sizes of these. So just keep in mind that this is semantic. We want the browsers that pick up our web page to know what's the most important title, what's the second most important, third, and fourth, and so on. Now, why does H7 look like this? Anyone? Anyone know why H7 looks like this? This is a trick question. I wonder if people will know. I mean, I have faith that you will know. So there is no H7. That's right. So, I mean, I would assume it's just taken on the size of like a paragraph element, right? Let's have a look. So let's use a P element, which is for paragraph. I am a paragraph. And click save and refresh. So yeah, it's kind of just taken on the role of a paragraph element, right? So there we go. Amazing. So let's get rid of that just in case. I don't want to confuse people because these all exist. This paragraph element exists. And now, so there's two things I want to actually tell you because you saw me use B. Oops. You saw me use the B element. So there's our opening tag and there's our closing tag, opening and closing. And if I save this and refresh, I'm just going to make this bigger. You will see that's bold, but this doesn't have semantic meaning. So I wouldn't really use this bold. I would use strong instead. And it will visually look like the bold element, but now it will be picked up by the browser. And the browser, if reading it using like a, what's it called? A screen reader, will read it out as if it was bold and like, it will just pick it up as bold. So that looks the same, but it has semantic meaning. Same for I. So I, for italic, will make it look like this, but it has no semantic meaning. And if I use the emphasis, this will have semantic meaning. So it will look the same, but again, semantic meaning has been applied. So I'm going to keep saying semantic meaning because I think it's really important. And I think it's something that's definitely, kind of like washed over when talking about HTML. But, I want to make you guys conscientious developers. And also, this is a fundamentals course. Yes, and it is Times New Roman font. You can change the font again with CSS. So yeah, let's carry on. So there we go. There we have headings. We've covered headings, we covered paragraphs, and we've covered how to change that text by making it bold or italic and so on. If you want to do like I said, if you want to change the colors and sizes, that is something you'll have to do with CSS when the time comes. So amazing. Let's move on. Let's make a list next because our portfolio will have a list. We're not getting very far with this portfolio. I appreciate that I'm taking things super slow, but this is a beginner course. And like I said, if you want to carry this on, just go on codewithaniel.com. It's free. Just check it out. And by the end of that, you will have like the fundamentals of HTML down. But yeah, it's obviously it's a whole fundamentals HTML course. So let's go list. We have about 5 minutes. I'm going to show you list really quickly. So let's do it. And yes, make sure you hit the like button. Woo. So we've got these to make a list. There's actually 2 lists I'm going to show you. So to make a list, first off, you don't need list items that goes in the list. So one list I'm going to show you is the ordered list. So that is an ordered list, right? But of course, there's nothing in it at the moment. That's because we need list items. So now we're going to start nesting elements within elements. And list elements should always really go in between the actual list element. List items go in list elements. Okay? So this way, otherwise all the list elements will be like, running free, like, whoa, we're wild. And this way, they're kind of wrapped in a parent element. So you can kind of keep them all together nicely. So this will become more apparent when you start working with divs, which are kind of like ghost elements. I like to call them ghosts because you can't, they don't really have anything. They're just like, whoa, you can make me whatever you want. And they don't have semantic meaning. But they're quite good at like kind of keeping stuff together and great for when it comes to working with CSS. But anyway, yes, all our little elements, these are now children of the parent element. This is an ordered list. And if I go, what can we list out? What should I go with? Oh, we're wild. Yeah, we're wild list elements. List items, sorry. Yeah, okay, let's go. Let's go with beans. Toast. Guess what list I'm making, by the way? Butter. Sausages. What could this list be for? Anyway, let's say this. And there we go. That is an ordered list. It's an ordered list because it's ordered by numbers. Okay. So this is an ordered list. You can also wrap it in a unordered list. So just change that to a U, click save. And now there's no order to this list. So those are the two lists I wanted to show you. You can take this a step further and, have it like ABC and so on. But for now, the fundamentals, these are the two that I'm going to leave you with. Okay. English breakfast ingredients. That is correct. I was making a full English breakfast, but I stopped at sausages. So great. That is good. Let's move on. So yeah, there we go. Made up of two elements, the wrapping element or the parent element and the child elements. This is what they look like in a browser. That's what they look like with the ordered list. And great. So at this point is where I kind of take a break from making the portfolio, because we made the portfolio very slowly, right? Because we're learning and building at the same time. And at this point, I would break and I would ask you. So perhaps this is a great place to stop, right? Because I think what I would want you to do is go away now, and using everything we learned so far, I basically want you to create your own project. So create your own folder on your desktop, call it HTML project 1. Remember, all lowercase, dashes, don't use spaces. Make an HTML page and put it into HTML project 1. So just like we did, we created an index HTML page and put it into HTML project 1. Add the boilerplate code. You don't need to remember this. I definitely don't. I take it from the Free Code Camp article that Jessica wrote. Get rid of everything you don't need for this very basic tutorial. So just keep the char set, the title, and I think that was it. Yeah, that's all I had. You can specify the language if you want. And once you have got to that point, it says unpause and you're going to carry on coding with me. But I'm just going to show you what to do if it's in here. I want you to essentially make a leaderboard. So at this point is when we stop. It's a table tennis leaderboard, essentially. In fact, I'm going to show you what it looks like, because I would like you to make it, like if you want, obviously. And then you can kind of go through the solution and how I made it. It's on my, like I said, on the 1 hour, on the introduction to HTML on my website, which is free. Don't worry, I don't ask for your credit card details, anything like that. Let me just find it though. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm just going into my HTML videos and I'm finding the table tennis project. Oh, weird. Okay, for some reason I can't open it, which is weird and I don't understand. Oh wait, found it, okay. Okay, so 1 second, sorry, this is unexpected. Okay, so there we go. So this is what the table tennis leaderboard will look like by the end. I want you to make this, so you can probably assume this is a H1 heading, right? Because it's like the top heading. Then you have a table. We didn't cover tables, so you can have a go at that. The table element. That will be a bunch of parent elements and nested elements. You can have a go at it like by yourself, and then revert and check it out on my course. Then we have a subheading. So that was probably an H2. And then we have a ordered list. So we just covered that. This is obviously italic. So we know how to do that. We also cover links here, which of course we haven't done yet. And then we have an image and then we have some text. So I think, with what we have learned, you should be able to get to this point. The only two things that you have not covered or sorry, 3 things we've not covered are links, of course, tables, and how to make these cool lines. But that's an HR element. It's literally just HR. So if you want to Google that, then please go ahead. So yes, that is what I'd like to leave you with. And please have a go at basically using everything we've learned so far to create your own project called HTML Project 1 and creating this table tennis leaderboard. So thanks very much. And yeah, I'm just reading the comments. I'm glad you found it lighthearted. Coding is meant to be fun, and I hope I've made this a little bit fun for you. And please, yeah, come along to the next one. I haven't decided yet if on the next one I should start from scratch again or kind of maybe pick up where we've left off today. But I'll have a think about it. Let me know in the, I guess, maybe just comment on the video, and yeah, we can take it from there. So thanks so much again, everyone. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being with me on my first live. Yeah, it wasn't as scary as I thought.